Okay, Ffion Davies, welcome to the Live on Form podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No, you're more than welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be on. Just a quick intro, Ffion, before we dive into it. You are you're a BJJ European and World No-Gi Champion.
Yeah, that's right.
You're a BJJ trailblazer, and as we've already discussed, my mate Ryan, who is the oracle of BJJ, says you are the shit, in his own words, and you're about the best around from the UK, male or female, at the moment. So it's a massive pleasure to have you on and just kind of unpick a little bit about your mindset and your career so far, which is still a really young career, but obviously then learn a bit about how you work on a day-to-day basis, how you think, and then obviously what your plans are for the future. So if I could start really, I guess, by going back to your childhood and what kind of kid were you, and what attracted you first to sport and I guess physical activity?
I feel a bit like I'm in therapy now. Let's go first to your childhood.
Oh, sorry, I don't intend to be. I'm not a psychologist.
Therapy session. So I started out in judo. That's like my main background. I wasn't like super high level in judo. I was on the Welsh team. I had a bit of success when I was young, but not like, major success or anything. And I also did a bit of rugby as well. A few things. I was very into sport, especially the male dominated sports for whatever reason. Okay. But judo was the one that I really stuck at. And I did that until I was 15, then quit for a couple of years, briefly went back to it. And then I found jiu-jitsu, and that was the love of my life.
So what do you think attracted you to, you say it was male dominated sports, and that's kind of interesting. We'll come into a bit of that later, but what do you think, what do you think it was that attracted you to that kind of physical activity base?
So main reason, I'm pretty sure, is Dragon Ball Z. I was really into Dragon Ball Z and I wanted to do fighting, and I also love watching Rocky. The Rocky films were a staple of my childhood. I used to watch them. You'd have the DVD, not the DVD, like the videos. Yeah. I'd watch it on a loop, so just go around all night, like restart, and I just watched it again. And I couldn't go to a boxing gym, so I tried to go to a boxing gym, and they were like, no, basically they didn't take girls.
Yeah, I read that. That is strange.
I don't think they even take girls now.
Really?
I'm pretty sure they still don't take girls at gym. It's in like the back end of nowhere. So I think that maybe, maybe they do, but I'll give it another go next time. I am actually back home right now, so I'll give them a little ask. Like, can I come now? Surely they're
not gonna turn you away now, right?
Well, they probably would. And then my mother and my father both started judo because they work in mental health. They were both mental health nurses.
Okay.
So they had to learn like self-defense, and part of the self-defense for that was judo. Alan Pepperbridge, who's like this very like high, he's passed away now sadly, but he is like really big in judo, especially in UK judo. And he was based in Swansea and had a gym there. And they went there to train, and then I started there. And I'm the one who stuck at it the most.
Yeah. So what, I guess what then led you, because I guess martial arts as a youngster is probably quite, it's not that left field, but certainly probably for a young girl, it's quite different and challenging. How was that with, I guess, the rest, how did that differ from the rest of your peer group? And, was that, did that make you quite unique, or were they friends around you who did the same thing? Was it a bit of a team thing, or were you quite introverted and thought, right, do you know what, I'm going to do this, and this will be the way I want to live my life?
Yeah, no, none of my friends in school or in school at all, none of them trained at all. I don't think they did any sports or anything like that. Like a lot of the girls in my school, the only sports anyone would really do is maybe gymnastics or dance, the more like typically feminine sport. So I had guns from an early age, and that made me stand out. I gained muscle really easily, which is great now, but at the time, the things that you were made fun of when you were younger become the things that are great when you're adult because it's like a conversation starter. It makes you a bit more unique. But when you're young, you don't want to be unique at all. So I was always self-conscious about my body.
Which is a real shame, right? Which is a real shame now because your arms are awesome, and it's kind of it is, yeah, and it is, and it's kind of, we're in that cultural time now where women of any, whether they're sporty or not, having a physique is admired now, right? It's just admired, and it's it's an interesting thing. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No worries. So yeah, I was. Obviously I stood out a bit. I was like, it would be like, can we get, the teacher comes around the classroom to ask for help with like carrying things, like the tables. They go, can we get 4 boys and Ffion? And I'd just be like, oh no, but like kind of deep down, I knew that was kind of cool, but I was like, maybe people will realize it's cool. And now it's something that people are it's a bit more interesting. And I have more the mindset where I'm like, if someone thinks that, I don't know, I look manly, then they're exactly the kind of person I want to like push away anyway. So
exactly,
it's good.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us the move from, so the transition from judo to BJJ. So you've been turned away from boxing gyms because you're female, which is weird, really. I mean, female boxing. I know we'll get onto female sports in general, but female boxing now is amazing. I mean, it's probably actually. The fights are probably actually my favorite fights to watch, probably because they're really competitive and just really interesting to watch develop. I know, obviously Kate Taylor and Natasha Jonas and, even Terry Harper, people like that. The fights are awesome. And it's a really interesting time in, sort of female sports now. Culturally, there's a massive growth in awareness, I guess. But yeah, going back to that transition from judo to BJJ, and I guess, was there some MMA in there?
Yeah, I started with MMA originally. Okay. And jiu-jitsu, when I went to this MMA gym, or it was mainly a jiu-jitsu gym, but they had MMA too. And the coach there, Chris Reese, was basically like, oh, you have to do jiu-jitsu to do MMA. Like, you have to do all the disciplines, obviously. So I started jiu-jitsu, and that's what I really got into because it was so similar to judo, but it had the aspects of judo that I liked. Okay. Could become like strong suits. So for example, we did like games in judo sometimes at camps and stuff where you take the gi jacket off and it's basically no-gi. And I would do a lot better in that because I could get closer. Okay. I could like get to like ogashi positions and like body lock positions where I could do better throws, like that would suit me better. So I'd win from those positions, but when we had the gi on, it'd be a bit more difficult. So like I didn't know that was kind of my first taste of no-gi. But then in jiu-jitsu, I was like, I can do the stand-up, but I can also just do anything. All I'm not allowed to do is hit them, which is, it was like unlimited. So I felt like a lot of rules had come into judo as well, with like you couldn't grab the legs, you couldn't do like double leg takedowns or anything like that. So it's becoming more and more restricted, whereas jiu-jitsu was so open. I really loved that then.
So then tell us how that progressed into, your competitive career. So
I didn't want to compete at all when I started jiu-jitsu because I'd done a lot of competing in judo, and I was kind of like, no, this is something I do to keep me healthy, because like going to the gym and just doing weights, I was like, this is monotonous and I hate it. My only reason for going is to try and look not terrible, Doreen, and I didn't want that. I don't like that being a goal to like be about how I look. It just didn't motivate me enough. I didn't care enough. Yeah, I don't care enough.
No, that's interesting. Yeah.
So doing a sport, I was like, I'll do a sport, but I won't compete. And then I went to watch a competition and I was so dying to compete. And then I did, and I was like, because it was purely for me and it was something that I was like completely self-motivated in. I've loved competing and it's never been a problem. I've never felt like, oh, I don't want to compete. Like I always feel like I want to compete now.
Do you think that competitive mindset's always been there? Do you think it's something, how would you describe yourself? Obviously you must be a deeply competitive person, but do you think that's always been there? Is it something that's, that's been nurtured along the way?
Yeah, I'm very competitive. Very competitive. I've always taken a lot of pride in being like strong. That's always been something that was like told to me from a young age. Okay. That I was like strong. Even in judo, I'd be like the strong one kind of thing. Yep. So I don't know. I think that maybe pushed me to be competitive. I don't think it's like, you know, I wasn't born competitive, but I feel like you get that reinforcement and you want to protect that sort of identity that you form when you're young. So for me, being that like fighter girl, where I was starting off in judo and stuff, like for as long as I can remember, I wanted to protect that identity. And when I quit judo and had those like few years where I wasn't doing any sort of martial arts or any sport at all, actually, I felt very lost. So when I came back to jiu-jitsu and I ended up being back into that persona, I feel like that competitiveness comes from wanting to protect that persona, because maybe in other aspects of my life I'm not very confident, but I've always been confident in my sport. So whether it was judo or jiu-jitsu now. Dream.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that obviously that kind of physical competition is really, really important. And you mentioned about some time off. What were the main challenges, you know, during that break off from any kind of, you know, was it break off from training, or was it just a break off from, you know, sort of competition, or was it a full whole scale, right, I'm doing nothing now and I'm just going to take some time off for whatever reason?
It was so at 15 I completely quit judo completely, like didn't go training, competing, nothing. And because I'd done it since I was 7, so it was just non-stop competing, training every night, competing a lot of the weekends. And I just, you know, when you're a teenager, you see your friends going and doing things. And you know, I'd even lost friends because I wasn't able to hang out on the weekend, which is the most ridiculous thing you could ever say right now. I should have been like, bye.
Yeah.
But you know, at the time I didn't care. I just wanted to fit in.
It's hard,
and
yeah.
I didn't have that many friends in judo because I was always very shy. Like chronically shy. I could barely speak. So making friends was difficult. So the ones I had in school, you know, I wanted to just be able to hang out with them, and because they were my only friends. So yeah, it was a complete break, and I piled on weight because I didn't know how to eat properly, didn't know anything about nutrition. All I knew was like starve yourself for a competition and that's about it, and then eat whatever you want. So when I had all this evening, so the evening would usually be when I did judo, my mother, God bless her, would drive me for like a half an hour to an hour at a time to different gyms, because you could do a different gym every night of the week sort of thing. And she'd drive me around. So there's an hour there, 2 hours training, and then an hour back. So I didn't have that much time to eat. Like I'd have a meal in the evening, obviously, but it'd be like one meal. Whereas when I quit, I had all this time to eat, and my appetite was huge because it, like from training for years, I could eat so much and I wouldn't pile on weight because I was training, I was burning the calories. But once I stopped, I didn't understand that you can't eat as much as when you're training, when you're doing nothing at all. And going from like training 5 nights a week to training 0 and then eating the amount of an athlete. I gained a lot of weight. I went from like a size 8 to a size 14, and it was in literally a year and a half. So it's a lot of weight to pile on. And then I was like, oh, I really need to learn about nutrition and stuff. So
yeah, so I guess what lessons did you learn from your time off? I mean, you know, you mentioned that nutrition is obviously one, but I'm supposing that, you know, the mental fortitude that, you know, a life with some kind of discipline and structure gives you, I guess that plays well into your personality. Do you feel like do you ever have mentally or physically, do you ever have time off, or are you always switched on? You're always thinking training, you're always thinking competition, you're always thinking, you know, sort of practicing in your mind. Do you find that you switch off?
No, because it's not something that I want to switch off from. I feel like with judo, it was something I did want to switch off from.
Okay.
It felt like I had to be disciplined. The attitude around the training was a lot different too. It was very grind, you know, break yourself. Like that's the way to be a champion. You have to completely break yourself, and like, you know, the strong survive, and the, you know, people who can't get up at 5 a.m. are losers. And
yeah, really.
It was that sort of it's that sort of mentality. Whereas for jiu-jitsu, people are way more chill. Like obviously there are people with those mindsets too, and I do think in some ways it is good to experience that, because I know that I can push myself. I know how to work hard, and I think some people genuinely don't know how to push themselves, if that makes sense. Like they don't know how to push themselves past a certain point. So I am grateful for that time, because now it's given me ability to be like, You don't need to absolutely ham yourself into the ground. Like obviously it's like I am disciplined, but it's because I really love it. I want to go training every day. It's not something I have to force myself to do. Even when I'm tired, I still want to go training, or I still want to watch jiu-jitsu or think about jiu-jitsu. Like I'll chat about jiu-jitsu with my boyfriend all day. It's not something that's hard to do. It doesn't feel like work. Like obviously sometimes I'm wrecked. I'm like, God, I need to rest, and I will rest because I'm not going to be any good in training. It's like, I don't think that's not like, I feel like turning up to training and beating yourself into the ground isn't actually that hard.
No.
Turning up to training and studying and thinking about what you're actually trying to do, and even taking lighter rounds where you're trying to work on certain skills, that's difficult. Just going to the gym and absolutely throwing yourself around, and like I go really hard, grind. It's like you're not actually thinking about what you're working on. You're not addressing any weaknesses. You're just going really hard. Okay, can you hear me now?
I've got you. You're back.
There you go. I don't know what happened there.
Listen, don't worry. We'll just pause that and just cut it out. It's not a problem. I forget where we were. Listen, I'll move on to the next question, which I'm finding, which I find really interesting, and then we'll move on to your kind of competitive career. But I read that you worked as a bouncer in Cardiff.
Yes.
Now I've been out for one night in Cardiff.
Oh God.
And it's I can imagine easier places to work on the door, right? So tell me a little bit about that and why.
Yeah, so there's like that strip of like bars, right? Along. Yeah. I went to a club, I won't name it, but it's the only club that kind of opens till 6 a.m. So it's great. So you get all the worst people coming from about 2 a.m. onwards.
Yeah.
And 3 a.m. past that. And it's like, really, shouldn't your night end at 3 a.m.? Sure.
Yeah.
But they come and they're full of energy from probably drugs.
Yeah.
And it's not fun, but I don't work there now. Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
Only a year and a bit. So it wasn't that long. It was something that I could work around training. That was like the motivation for it. So it'd be like work till like 9 till 6 a.m. and then I could go to the training like twice a day then. So it's like, great, this works. But that's not really something that you can do for long if you want to be healthy and you want to be able to train properly.
It's interesting you mentioned earlier about your mum taking you to all your sessions. My little boy now, I've got two children, a boy and a girl. My little boy's 6, nearly 7, and my weekends, well, nights as well, are starting to be filled with taking him places. He's just started kickboxing.
Yeah.
So he loves kickboxing. He tried BJJ. I wanted to get him into BJJ, but he went for one lesson. He went for one lesson, and it was quite a small class, and they put him in with I think about an 8-year-old girl to roll with, and he's quite a shy kid, and of course kickboxing's quite stand up and it's a bit of distance and you're moving around a lot, whereas BJJ it was like, right, go and grab this girl's gi and get really close to her and hug her and then roll around with her, and he felt a little bit uncomfortable at 6 years old, which is a real shame really. I really want him to go back, but he's quite a shy little boy, but he kind of enjoyed it. But I think that first kind of circumstance for him was just a bit off-putting really. So yeah, but it's interesting you mentioned about the driving around. I guess you've got a lot to thank your mother there for taking you places and kind of helping you on your career.
Yeah, like both my parents were really, really good at that. Like my dad is like mainly with my brother coaching rugby, but he'd also take me places. And yeah, my mom was really into judo, so
right,
she's very supportive.
Which is your favorite Rocky film, by the way? We got off Rocky.
Rocky 3. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's
Ivan Drago, Rocky 4. So
Dragos, yeah. So 3 is B.A. Baracus, right? Mr. T.
Yeah,
Rocky,
Mr. T.
Rocky 3's Mr. T. Yeah.
Yeah. We lose Mickey.
Yeah, I can remember. Yeah,
that was sad. I love that one. I like the one he loses and he comes back. That's my favorite.
Rocky is just an amazing franchise. So tell us about your career then. So we've got you started. Tell us about the kind of rise from starting to kind of the top, or to where you are now?
Yeah, so like I was competing mainly just for fun. Like, so it went from I'm not going to compete to I'll do it just for a bit of fun. And and then quickly, like, I got more serious about it. Like, I was in college and working in a pub at the time when I first started, and I was like, okay, what I'll do is I'll give up one of those so I have more time to train. And I was like, well, I'll give up the college. I'm not recommending this, by the way. I'll give up the college because then I can make money from the job to fund myself so that I can train. If that makes sense.
It does.
So I was like, well, the college isn't going to give me any money. So I kind of went from there and started training a lot. And then it was like, just training all as much as I could, as many sessions as I could. And then I went to, like, I think No-Gi Worlds at Blue Belt was the competition, sort of changed my attitude, because I didn't even know, like, I didn't know there was a Gi Worlds, didn't know that existed. And I was like, I'll go, like, when I found out that was a thing, I was like, I'll go to the Worlds and see how good I am, because I was winning domestically, like in the UK. I was winning all my matches at the time because I was a blue belt, and, you know, I was able to, you know, if I'd gone up the levels, I wouldn't be able to, but like a blue belt, I was winning. So I was like, I'll see if I can, you know, how well I do against, you know, the girls in America, like that's where it's at, sort of thing, and Brazilian girls and stuff like that. So I went to No-Gi Worlds because I missed Gi Worlds because I didn't know it existed. So we looked up and found that, all right, No-Gi Worlds on in, I think it was like November. So I went there, and I'd had like really low expectations. I was like, well, surely now in America I'm not going to do very well, but we'll just see how I sort of end up. And then I won my division. So I was like, I'll do the absolute, and I won the absolute as well. Wow. So I got double gold, and I was like on my own at that, just like, woo, cool. Wow. And some American people were like trying to be like, were being my friend, and they were like kind of like shouting to me like, go on, random girl with a funny voice and a funny name. Yeah, so from then I was like, oh shit, like maybe I could be all right at this. And that's when I started taking it really serious. Well, not that I wasn't taking it seriously, but just competitively I was taking it seriously then, where I was like, oh, I could be all right at this. Maybe I could be an actual world champion now that I know that that's a thing. Yeah.
And what's the competitive world like for, you know, for women in BJJ? Is it, you know, in terms of, I guess, in terms of competitive numbers, in terms of, you know, women in the gym, do they stack up with the guys?
How do you mean?
Just in terms of numbers. Yeah, numbers, you know, yeah, I guess numbers first, and then I guess awareness and, you know, rewards. What's the, you know, what are the rewards like in terms of, you know, competition prizes? How do they stack up?
So IBJJF now does, well, when it's back, when the Worlds is back, they didn't do any prize money, and now they do by numbers and division. So it's not about male or female, it's about, so it's like between 4 to 8 in a bracket gets a certain amount, and then as it goes higher you get more money, which I think is the most fair way, because yes, you'll have less women in women's divisions, obviously, but you're giving them the opportunity to grow. I think that's great. For a while the UAE wasn't doing that. They were just doing more money for men, less for women, and combining brown belt and black belt women, and that was obviously frustrating. But then because the IBJJF put that into place, now they do the same, where it's based on bracket numbers, which is brilliant. Like, because they had to, because the IBJJF changed it to this, they had to follow suit, because otherwise people would complain, there'd be issues. So now there's money for both of those things. It's not that much money, but at least there's money coming in. So show wise, on shows you make money. I can't comment on how much money certain people make because I have no idea. I know that I get paid, and I will ask for a good pay and amount that I'm happy with. I'm sure there's guys who obviously get more, but at the same time they do draw in more numbers. I think it's more to do with the promotion of certain events and how they promote the women, or like the media that promotes the women is more the issue, as they don't really promote them as much. Not all, there's some shows that are really great for it, but then others maybe not. So and then in ADCC is the worst one. Amazing competition, and it's not the the guy who's organizing now, Mojasim, it's not his fault. It's deeper in the organization. He like runs the show, but the prize money for women is significantly lower. And then there's the super fights, which get a ton of money, get like something like 40 grand. And then like I got silver, so I got 3 grand.
Wow.
So there's no super fights women. No women. The women don't have the super fight. They don't have an absolute division.
Right.
And the bracket weights are under 60 kilos and over 60 kilos. So if you're over 60 kilos, you could fight 130 kilo women.
Yeah, wow, that's
which happens
gap.
a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a massive discrepancy, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's bad under 60 because like I'm like 60 kilos, so it's great for me. Like I'm at the top of my division,
Yep.
But then I could fight someone who's like 10 kilos lighter.
Yep.
But then that's even worse in the plus 60 because there's a lot of girls who can't get under 60 kilos,
Yep.
but could maybe be like 63 kilos or 65.
Yeah.
Who have to fight someone who is 130. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
That is bonkers. And is there any moves to change that? I mean, surely that's common sense, right? To you and I.
Not at the moment, no.
No.
I think they're trying. I don't know how we're not going to find out until it comes around again, if the efforts have been, fruitful.
Yeah, worthwhile.
If it's gonna, I know that they are trying to, but we can't know until it happens. It's kind of like, well, be grateful you're there, sort of thing.
Yeah, that is not good.
And there's also no testing for steroids too, so you could be that much bigger than someone and on steroids, which is obviously very dangerous for someone who is very light comparison. So that's really disappointing. And there's so many sports that do it so well. Like I think MMA is doing it so brilliantly, the way they promote the women. Yes, the amount you get paid is kind of based on what you bring, but then you have like people like obviously Ronda Rousey got paid a ton, and I'm sure the women now who are extremely popular get paid a ton, and it's more about what you bring show wise, but you're given that opportunity because they promote you, whereas it's sort of like in jiu-jitsu it's a bit more, oh well, you got to be, you got to have people come watch you, but then it's like, well, you don't promote them, so how can you have people want to come watch them, if that makes sense? It's like it's like this endless circle, or like, and a cycle of, they don't promote the female athletes very much, so then people think, well, it's not worth watching them, they're not being promoted. Like you as the media send out the message, if that makes sense. So if you're not promoting women, then how can you expect people to want to watch them or make efforts to watch them if they're being told that they're not worth watching? Yeah,
it's definitely a vicious cycle, isn't it? So what you mentioned MMA and UFC there. So is that a potential avenue for you? And I guess how much training do you do outside of BJJ? I know I mentioned at the start that I'm quite good friends with Rosie Sexton, and I think she was the first UK woman to fight in the UFC.
Yeah.
But she was right at the start, I guess, before female athletes probably got well rewarded. So is there an avenue for you, do you think, to progress into MMA, UFC? And is that something you're looking at?
Yeah, I want to progress to MMA now. Partly because I love the thought of, like, again, what I love about jiu-jitsu is it's so open. And then MMA is obviously a step further, and I've always had that interest in striking as well. So it kind of comes full circle, and I just really love watching MMA. And I can still do jiu-jitsu within MMA, obviously.
Yeah.
But also partly because in jiu-jitsu there's not that many more financial opportunities.
Yeah.
Like it is still, it can be for certain people, but it's like 2 people.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those 2, and maybe that's because I don't trash talk, and maybe I'm not that exciting, I don't know, whatever. It's and that's fine, and I haven't got the wins yet that justifies that either. So I think transitioning to MMA makes a lot of sense, and I'm excited for it. I think it could, there's a lot more money there, and again, it's at the promotion where it's women do get equally promoted, or like maybe not equally because there's not as many women, but it's fair. I feel like it is a lot more fairly promoted. than jiu-jitsu is at the moment. I think that will change, but yeah.
The UFC events are pretty awesome, aren't they? Even for male and female, you can see they're really, there's a massive amount of finance going into them. They're really exciting, great venues. What have you got to do to better your MMA plan then? What are you working on now?
Striking. Just learning striking, trying to get that to a good level. It's not something I want to just be like, oh, it's okay, and I'll just hop in and do jiu-jitsu. Like, if I get stuck on my feet and I can't take someone down, I really need to be able to first mainly look after myself. Like, I can't go in there with, like I did with MMA before when I first started, where I had really, really non-existent striking. So I'm trying to get that to a good level. It's really fun. It's very different, but it's not that different from jiu-jitsu in terms of the mindset, it's easier to learn now that I understand more about jiu-jitsu. Just getting that to a good level and linking all the disciplines together and working on my wrestling, which I've neglected for a while because in jiu-jitsu it's just not as necessary. People pull guard a lot, so it's like you hardly ever train wrestling. So trying to train that as well now.
So what's your routine like at the moment? You're training. What's a typical week like?
Well, right now I'm in Wales, so
very much.
And then with COVID in Ireland, it's been hard, but I'll train jiu-jitsu in the day and then go up to either there's like a gym in Ireland, and I'll do MMA there. So I'll go up and do striking classes or get private lessons and things.
And you seeing, I guess along with your success and along with the growth of USC, are you seeing more women joining the sport? Are you seeing more interest in gyms to get into BJJ, to get into mixed martial arts? Do you think we're in at a really good period now?
Yeah, I think it's gonna boom now. I know it's like random, but when I was in Australia, they had tons of girls.
Okay.
Like some gyms more than lads. I think because in their culture, it's like in Australian culture, it's way more. Girls are much sportier. It's encouraged more for girls to be sporty. I think that's changing a lot now in like the UK and Ireland and things, where girls are it's okay to be sporty now. So that's becoming a bit less, I don't know, frowned upon, like girls shouldn't get sweaty or anything like that. So I've heard a lot of people being like put off because you're sweating.
Really?
Which I was like, what? That's the thing, people worry about sweating. I was like, what? I could sweat my eyes and I'm like, but like that's a thing that really puts some people off, like male and female. I've heard that. I was like, that was mad to me, but like I'm like, sweating is healthy. You know that, right? Like it's good to sweat. Like I love the feeling of being sweaty. But I feel like it's growing, and especially in the gym I'm at now, before COVID, like the numbers were growing loads in terms of women, so it's great.
Do you see yourself as having a role to play in that, in terms of, a bit of a poster girl, if you like, for physical activity or for BJJ or for combat martial arts sports?
I don't see myself at all, but I am sure that, like, it would be for me if I went to a gym and there's a girl there and she's a black belt. To me, it's all it says when you see a girl who's a black belt who trains there, that you're like, oh, this is a place I can be. There's a girl here, she's reached the end goal sort of thing of this sport, and that means there's a place for me. I feel like when you walk into a gym and there's no girls, you have to, and this could be unfair as well, because I'm sure there's lots of guys who are like, God, I wish we could get some girls in, but you'll walk into a gym as a beginner and be like, why aren't there girls? What's wrong here? Because I'm interested. I know people, I'm interested in coming here. I'm sure people have been in the past. So why hasn't any girls stuck out at it? If that makes sense, you have to wonder, what is the vibe? Is it a laddish culture? What is the vibe? Are the lads going too hard? Are the lads in the DMs, straight away when there's an attractive new person coming in? And there's nothing wrong with like wanting to pursue a romantic relationship. I'm not saying that, but it's all about the vibe in which you go about it.
Yeah, I get it totally.
Especially like, it's like, oh, fresh meat, great, let's creep on this one. But it's, I think that like, for if you went into East Coast gym at train out, you'd be like, oh, there's like almost 20 girls, like during like the one point there was like, before COVID again, there was so many girls, you just be like, oh, I belong here, look, there's plenty of girls here, this is obviously a place I can be. As you go in, it's a sausage fest, you're just like, what, like, why aren't there girls? You have to question that, and then maybe you go elsewhere, you don't carry on. But yeah, it takes like maybe one girl alone, and then that girl has to be friendly to whoever comes in, obviously, and not be like, I don't know, cold or whatever, just like try and be friendly, and then that usually helps then. Yeah,
there's definitely a nurturing, I guess, a nurturing part, isn't there, to one of the better people in the gym, be it male or female, to try and encourage other people to kind of live that lifestyle, and and to form really good habits, and then as one attracts another one, then hopefully that kind of cycle continues, and you keep recruiting people into a lifestyle.
Sounds like a cult leader.
Yeah, it does a little bit. It wasn't intended to.
It's a good cult though.
Yeah, so there's a lot of so everyone I know who practices BJJ says it's a real community. It's a real kind of family feel, and that's different too. So take a regular gym. So I've gone into gyms all my life, and it's very, go in there, lift some weights around for an hour. You might have a bit of a scowl at the person next to you because you think you're bigger, and then you leave the gym, right? But BJJ and martial arts are very different than that. Yeah,
like, I mean, there's two ways that can go though, of course. Like, there's one way where it is literally a cult way, which is negative. It's like, we're a family, and then they hold things over you where you can't train at other gyms, for example.
Okay.
So there's that can happen a lot, where people are like, we're a family, why would you co-train there? When in reality, like, it's a community feel is what you're really aiming for. It's like, we're a community. If you go and train at another gym and then you come back, that's great for the community, because now you're bringing back more like techniques. That's good. You're getting better, makes everyone else better, rather than banning people from training in other gyms and stuff like that. Obviously that's negative. And holding things over people by being like, we're a family. Dream was like, no, we're a group of mates. Dream is like, we're a group of friends. We're really close because we're trusting each other with our bodies, which sounds almost sexual when I say that. What I mean is, like,
I completely get it.
I'm in a submission, and I'm like, I trust that when I tap, he's gonna let go. Doing that, that's a lot of trust, because like, if he doesn't let go, I'll break my arm. If I can't escape, or if they got a choke on, they could literally kill you if they decided not to let go. So you're putting a lot of trust into these other people. So you obviously bond over that. And then there's the whole thing with like physical touch that, like, obviously is really healthy for people to have that, and then like that will increase bond as well then. And there's something about like fighting, like physically fighting someone and being like, I don't know, you're just like, right, we sorted that out then. Then you just feel bonded to that person then. But yeah, like, there's two ways that can go, and I think most of the time it's the positive one, but you just hear about the negative stories, right?
Yeah, every time I speak to anyone who kind of does BJJ, they all say about how when they started, how kind of humbling it was. And I've kind of threatened to start now for so long, and I'm just not going to do it. And I've never really got near. And I guess kind of that, maybe that's my kind of fear of being humbling. So going in there, as a guy who's reasonably strong, trained all his life, but then getting absolutely humbled by somebody who's probably smaller than me, who's lighter, and having to start right at the start, right, and learn. It's such a technique-based sport, isn't it? I guess you can get a certain distance on strength and physical strength, but I guess once that's gone, then it's solely down to your technique. Yeah,
like, you find that the best people are small, skinny lads who are maybe looking kind of nerdy. That they tend to be the better people, because they're not coming in there thinking, I can fight, I'm hard. Dream. There's no ego. They just trust you. Like, the technique, oh, I'll do it. Whereas a stronger guy will tend to assume that he knows how to do it. So like, they're quite hard to teach, even though they got the ability. If they just listened and didn't have that ego, they would actually be really good, because they got the strength behind the technique. But it's few and far between. You usually see the nerds thrive in jiu-jitsu because they just they know they know they can't fight, so they're gonna listen. And women are actually really easy to teach for the most part too, because there's no, I know how to fight, I can just punch you in the head and I'll win because I'm really strong. They're just like, hey, yeah, I'll do the technique. They'll just listen, and then they get technical. And yeah, of course, physicality can oftentimes override technique, but once that gap gets bigger and bigger, then it doesn't. But yeah, I feel like it's something that I know, like a lot, like, you know, like my brother and stuff, like he's very physical, he doesn't really want to do it. And I think I'd rather know in the gym rather than I'd be out in the street and then find out that.
Absolutely.
Like, I think it's such a good experience to just realize I really can't fight. Even now, I'm like, God, I really can't fight. If someone's real big, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And it's good to know where you stand. I feel like it's good to know where you stand in that, like, it was a bit mad, but like that hierarchy. It's good to know where you actually stand. Like, you'll talk to people a lot more respect when you understand that you could get battered by literally anyone, some like nerd lad who's like real skinny. Like, you'll be more respectful in the way, I don't know. I just feel like it's such a good sport for it. I feel like it's the only sport where you can really spar 100% and you're not going to get hurt, because all you have to do is tap. Like, obviously striking is great too, but like you can't throw 100% in the gym. And if you are, you're not going to last long, because you're going to get hurt, or you're going to hurt someone else. You're going to get a brain injury. You can't just do that in the gym all the time. You can only really do that in the fight, like on fight night, right? In jiu-jitsu, you can do that every day. And that is hard for a lot of people, but that's exactly why people should be doing it. People need to be humbled. It's really, I think it's so important, like, and I get humbled all the time, every day. Like, I'm meant to, like, I've won Will No-Gi and I've won like big tournaments, and I get battered every day because like otherwise that go to my head, right? So like I get beaten up all the time, so it's good.
I think you make a really interesting point. I think, do you know what? That's probably what stopped a lot of people getting started, and it's probably what stopped me getting started. And even though you're trying to raise kind of traces of ego from your personality, it probably is that fear of going in and starting right at the beginning, because I wouldn't go in there expecting, because I'm a bit bigger than somebody, that I could physically outperform them. I'd kind of understand the respect thing, but it's getting over the humbling of starting right at the beginning. And everyone does that, but I guess the older you get, it's probably tougher to admit that. And I guess that's why a lot of successful martial artists probably start young and have been doing it a long time, because there's probably less ego there, and there's less, constructs of being strong and physically powerful, and there's less ego to damage, perhaps.
I don't know, because I guess a lot of them do start young, but I feel like with you can apply it to anything. I feel like now, because of jiu-jitsu, I feel like I'm happy to start I'm starting striking and I'm shit. It's nice to be shit at something. It's like, I'm not meant to be good. Like, when I start something new, you're not meant to be good. Nope. Like, that's the whole point. But how will you get good if you can't? I'll never be good at maths if I don't start trying to do maths. Like, otherwise I can just be like, well, I'll be crap at that forever, then I'll never try, because I don't want to be new at it. Maybe not maths isn't the best, because I did that in school. But like tennis, right? Like, I'm obviously not gonna be good at tennis. I've never done tennis. But like, if I went to tennis, being like, oh, well, I'm quite physical though. If I swing really hard, I might hit the ball. I might hit quite far. It's like, no, I'm gonna be crap at it because I've never done it. And I think people are like, kind of like, oh, I'm bad, I don't want to do it. But it's like, everyone is bad. Like, everyone is crap at it. You'll never be good at it. Like, in jiu-jitsu now, I'm still crap compared to so many people. Like, I'll never feel good at jiu-jitsu because there's always someone who can beat me up, and that's majority of person. The only person's probably Roger Gracie. Like, he's probably the only person who doesn't feel crap at jiu-jitsu, because he's not, because he's so good, and he can definitely beat up everyone. So like, that's the one person who can't be humbled. And he doesn't need it because he's so good. So like, that's one person. So everyone else though can get beaten up by someone. And I just feel like, when you start something new, you're not supposed to be good at it. So getting upset or getting mad that you're not good at it makes zero sense. You haven't put the work in to justify this anger. And also, I'm still egotistical. Like jiu-jitsu doesn't get rid of ego. It just controls it in a way where you, like, I can channel that ego into training hard. Like it's not bad to have an ego. It's not bad to be a little bit egotistical, as long as you're not being rude or, you know, having a tantrum because you lost. It's like, it's more use the ego in a good way to train harder and to motivate you to get better. If that makes sense. I don't know. I'm going off on a bit of ramble there.
No,
but.
it's really interesting. Yeah, it is interesting. I do think there's a lot of people, you know, maybe I've always been one of them, you know, that's starting, you know, that reluctance to go outside your comfort zone into something physical that feels inherently you should be good at.
Or you just have an interest in other sports. Like there's another thing is like jiu-jitsu is great for showing these things, but you don't have to. Some people just don't like it. Yep. Some people just don't have an interest in it.
Yep.
And that's fine too. You don't have to be like really into it. Like you could find the same sort of result in other sports, I'm sure. But I think because jiu-jitsu is fighting, or like it's wrestling, it's not fighting your fists, obviously, because it is a form of fighting. And it's such a natural way that you would fight, like with your siblings and stuff. Like you wouldn't hit each other because you don't want to leave bruises. Nope. You'd wrestle each other. And I think because it's so natural and it's literally you're physically fighting someone, I think that's where it has the best terms of like humbling people, because fighting is such a natural thing for people to do. And like it does really set that like hierarchy. And I think some people just don't want to know where they slot into that, but that's okay. Dream. You can find a similar sort of thing in other sports, I'm sure. Dream.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, you mentioned potentially what you're going to do next, but in terms of real simple question, what's next for Ffion Davies in the next 5 years? So in 5 years' time, what do you want to have done? In all areas, anywhere you want to go.
I'd like to win the Worlds. Definitely win the World Championships and be like the first UK person to do that. Would be really cool. And I would love to make the transition to MMA. For that, I don't want to be like, I want to hit this goal, because I don't know. I need to fight first and know how I feel about it. You know, right now I think I'm gonna love it, but I can't know until I have a fight and really feel what it's like. So I'd love to have an MMA fight, see how that goes, where that takes me. But my biggest goal is to have a gym, maybe at the very end of those 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. Open a big gym and have a competitive gym. I'd love that. I'd love to have like a proper place for athletes and build that up. So I love coaching, so that would be my main goal probably. Okay,
that's great. Listen, I appreciate your time. We're coming up to about the hour period. Anything else anywhere else you want to go? Anything else you want to speak about?
No. More travel, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were just saying earlier how kind of challenging it's been. Well, for everyone really this time, but definitely for competitive sports people who are used to doing things on a habitual basis, and their daily routines are led by physical activity and kind of health and well-being. When a big chunk of that's taken away from your life, I think you realize probably how much you miss it, and therefore how much you're privileged to do it, really.
Definitely, yeah, I'm feeling the lack of endorphins.
Cool. Well, listen, I'm sure we're all back to it pretty soon, and you can get back to fully kind of competitive life and full training schedule and back on the road pretty soon. Listen, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been really cool to speak to you. And
you.
Take care. Thank you, Ffion.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.